You're in the end of the month of May, 2 majors down on the men's golf calendar. This is the PGN Par 4, talking a lot of PGA Championship in the aftermath of what ended up being a very dramatic tournament down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm Matt Gajtka with Zac Weiss, and also we'll turn things a little bit local, or at least personal, before we sign off on today's show. And thank you for those of you who've been looking at our stories on the site, pittsburghgolfnow.com. Zac recently traveled out to the D.C. area to cover the Wells Fargo Championship, moved to TPC Potomac for this year, and I guess we'll see if greater DC gets some golf in the near future. That's one of the closer spots that you can go for PGA Tour golf, unfortunately, if you're in Western PA. But the closest location will be coming up here soon, the Memorial, and Zac will have on-site coverage of that as well, as we'll discuss in the final shot of today's program. But first and foremost, Zac, a player that we've been waiting to get back in the major column, did it, but in unconventional fashion. Justin Thomas, 7 shots back starting the final round at Southern Hills on Sunday, 8 shots back midway through the round, and really a non-factor. Then all of a sudden he turns up on the back 9, makes a couple of birdies in a row, and the course and I think the pressure of major championship golf down the stretch, down the back 9, affected a few guys at the top of that leaderboard who had 0 major championships and 0 PGA Tour wins, in fact. And Justin Thomas sneaks up there, doesn't even birdie 18, but gets into a playoff, birdies 2 out of 3, and beats Will Zalatoris. So JT is a Wanamaker Trophy holder for the second time in his career, matching his victory in 2017. This is 15th PGA Tour win, Zac, so it feels a little overdue, but also an illustration of how deep golf has gotten on the men's side in particular. He's halfway to Brooks Koepka, long way from a guy like Phil Mickelson, but I think we all believe JT to be on a level with at least a Koepka, on a level with maybe not a DJ, but right behind him. So what does this win do for him, and what were you taken by in the Sunday dramatics?
I mean, you said it yourself in the Open, when guys have 0 major championship wins and you see a 14, 15-time PGA Tour winner starting to creep up. And it just so happens his BFF is no longer Jordan Spieth. Apparently he upgraded to Tiger Woods. So it's a heck of an upgrade, no offense to Jordan and his many majors. But regardless of that fact, you have to look at the board. And when you notice as a fan, as a commentator, or as a person in your own skin, when you look at that leaderboard for such a long period to know where you stand and you see Justin Thomas, the name carries weight. He's won at the PGA Championship before, and he can pull off all of the shots regardless of how far behind he was. And even with the shank, he managed to limit the damage as much as possible. And he's got a guy that has won a lot of majors and has total allegiance and belief on the bag in Jim Bones Mackay, a guy that both of us are very familiar with. And I think Phil Mickelson was a very interested observer, and there might have been a 2-letter abbreviation that started with the letter F from the caddy that really was a nice little message sent to Phil Mickelson there, and he got to keep the pin flag too, which that's always nice too, if you know, you know. But regardless of that, I mean, even though he didn't birdie 18, it was just business. The shot was beautiful, and from the back 9, JT just seemed like a man possessed. Bones was sending him the right information from before the first ball was hit on Sunday. And then you look at the playoff itself, and you just see Zalatoris is kind of looking around, and then JT's just all business. He's focused on exactly what he has to do in every given moment. It wasn't the bro handshake or the bro high five. It was a handshake and, okay, I have to get to work. And this was a business trip for Justin Thomas. All of Sunday appeared that way, and he took it very seriously. And you know what? Good for him. I mean, he's been pushing, and we've been wondering when he's going to get off that 1 to 2. And he more than has the game. He more than has the shooting ability. And we've seen him succeed in playoffs before. And it was a very, very different course than what we've seen kind of in the first 4 rounds, where both guys are making birdies, where it was a struggle to do so before. I mean, heck, the senior PGA last year, the winning total there was -8. And this was not as efficient as that. And it just goes to show, even though these guys got a dose of what this course can do a year prior, that there's struggles. And I mean, look, a guy that was just barely in red numbers made the turn, or was just there in the periphery, was able to turn it around because he strung shots together. And at the end, he was the one that believed the most. And it shows. I mean, for a weekend looper like the two of us or the everyday golfer, it shows that, I mean, maybe you're having too many squares on the scorecard, but don't give up on the round. There's still some positives that you can take away from it. So I think that JT's win should serve as motivation. I think there's some people that might have been turned off by the fact that there were a couple names that weren't really factors after that weren't even in the weekend that were misses, with Scheffler and Tiger Woods most notably. Rory McIlroy was the first round leader, and he gave way in a big way. And just you saw guys that were there that just weren't there all of a sudden. And it's a shame, but I mean, for Justin Thomas to prevail in such a fashion, I mean, all the credit in the world to him. He pulled off all the shots he needed to, and it mattered. And he stayed poised within himself, and he kept the nerves to himself. So a credit to him. A major champion proved exactly why he was that this weekend.
I'm glad you brought up the Tiger connection, the Bones connection, because yes, having both of those guys in his, I guess, inner circle is a big help to him when it comes to these huge moments and these big tournaments. But also it's a credit to him that these two, well, one, an all-time player, maybe the best of all time, and one of the best caddies of all time, had decided to affiliate themselves with him. So I think we all know and we all knew that JT's a big-time talent, and he's going to be around for a long time, and he's probably going to have a whole pocket full of majors by the time this thing is over with. But these guys saw that this is a player that is on the rise, is worthy of their time and of their efforts. And I think it's pretty cool to see that older generation, whether it be a caddy or a legendary player in Tiger, to spend some time and pour themselves into Justin Thomas. And I know that John Rahm commented on the fact that, well, Tiger's not giving that up to just anybody. It's not just you go up and ask him and he'll tell you everything about every course that he's ever played. Only JT gets that dissertation, to use John's words. But for me, that's a credit to Justin Thomas. It's not some happenstance or luck necessarily. It's more the fact that these guys see a lot in him, and I think for good reason, because he has delivered with wins on the PGA Tour. Maybe he's underperformed in the majors, but now with 2 and about 6 or 7 years on tour, at least in the traditional arc of golfers, Zach, this puts him in a pretty good spot going forward, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen. I mean, he won a major. I mean, you always like to gauge the temperature after the majors, and frankly, it's too soon. I think we're still recovering, you and myself as purists and traditionalists, to the fact that the year's half over already, given the 2 majors and how quickly everything is ramped up with the schedule. So, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's so tough to gauge. I think we'll maybe relook at this conversation in maybe about three weeks or so, or 4 weeks so's time, when we discuss everything after the U.S. Open. I think that's more of an indicative side, because let's look at the facts. I mean, of course, JT is a winner, but I mean, he's also been overshadowed by Tiger, and a lot of stretches he's been overshadowed by Jordan Spieth, and because of strictly the majors. A lot of what it comes down to is the majors. I mean, didn't you and I see the quote this weekend about how everything but the majors is just money? The majors are what matters, and that's what counts. And right now, JT is too. And I mean, is he Brooks Koepka yet? I don't think so. I think that JT has more of an all-around game than Brooks does, but it's the majors when Brooks shows up, and that's what people look at. It's the same thing when you look at World Series rings, NBA titles, in any sport. I mean, yes, Phil Kessel was a Stanley Cup champion, but was he Wayne Gretzky? No. But I mean, it's the same kind of a thing. I mean, is Justin Thomas a major winner? Yes, but it's the PGA Championship, which is regarded as the least valued of the 4 majors, and he's done that twice, which there's value on. And granted, his dad, Mike, of course, is a PGA professional in of his own right in the teaching ranks. I mean, I'm sure that means a lot more to him than if, Jordan Spieth won the PGA Championship, although that would mean the Grand Slam for him, but just basically speaking. So, I mean, everything carries its own weight, and Justin Thomas finally, I think, can exhale. I think he was kind of still reeling a little bit from losing the sponsorships and regaining that with Ralph Lauren, and now he's with Grayson Clothiers and everything associated with that. Even the players, when he won last year, just seemed always on edge. 72nd hole, a literal proof of that, where it took every ounce of fairway to avoid the water hazard. So, I mean, it's good to see Justin Thomas succeeding. It's great for golf. He does represent a lot of the everyman. He's nothing necessarily, when you look at him, is spectacular. Average build, but drives the ball a ton because of his process, and he finds the way to get extra yards. And that's what makes him the most exciting at least from my perspective. But I think the time will tell what the tail of the tape will be at the end of it.
Yeah, he's got plenty of skills, like you mentioned, the prodigious distance for a man of, I would say, below average stature these days on tour. And his ability to dial down the wedges, there's no one better at taking a little bit off of a club inside 100 yards, especially than Justin Thomas. And we saw him approach the pin beautifully in the second hole of the playoff, or probably the first hole of the playoff against Zalatoris. Arguably the pivotal moment because Will had piped his drive down the middle, hit the green in 2 on the par 5, and JT had to just bunt it down the fairway, but it didn't matter because his approach was so good. And then Justin's off the tee play just flashed in a big time way in the last 2 playoff holes. So he is one of the more entertaining players on tour. Now he's one major shy of, like you mentioned, his good buddy and fellow competitor Jordan Spieth. All right, move on to shot 2 here. Zach, and let's talk about the runners up and the guys who were near the top of the leaderboard. I want to bring into the picture, first of all, Will Zalatoris, who has been a strokes gained maven in the majors. He hasn't played very many majors. I think this was his 9th, or maybe his 8th. And he has 5 top 5 finishes and now a solo second in a playoff, solo second at the Masters. And he had a WD when he was playing well at the Open Championship a couple of years ago. So the record could actually be a little bit better. For me, it's a testament to his ball striking ability. That's where he gets it done. And another slight figured guy. He's tall, but not particularly bulky, but he hits the ball over 180 miles an hour off the tee. One of the longer drivers on tour and one of the more accurate hitters on tour. And then you have guys like Cameron Young, another up-and-comer, another American. The embarrassment of riches on the American side continues on there. And he's someone that we've heard from at the top of leaderboards in PGA tournaments in the past. He ends up in the top 5. And Mito Pereira, not to bury the lead, but he had the solo lead. Yeah, right. Let's talk about him. He had the solo lead, 1 shot ahead going into the 18th, a difficult 18th, but he rinses his drive in the creek down the right side and cannot scramble for bogey to make it into that 3-hole playoff. Pereira had won 3 times on the Korn Ferry Tour last year and was promoted to the PGA Tour as a result. So out of those 3 guys, those 3 stood out to me. I guess, no, throw in Matt Fitzpatrick too. But which of those guys gained the most from their experience from having a chance going down the stretch? Fitzpatrick in the final group, so he was right there under the gun as well.
I mean, it's so tough. I don't know if any of them really did, to be honest. I mean, I think that Zalatoris needs to be nastier. I mean, it seemed on the putting green that he was deferring to Justin Thomas. He's looking for a sign. He's kind of looking for the hello. It's like the 6-year-old kid that has the hand out waiting for the high five from his favorite athlete or player, and the guy just has his head down and stiffs him. That's almost what it felt like Zalatoris was. I mean, it was just, you're looking for someone to put the ball down, the killer instinct, and it just seemed like he was just going with the flow. And I'm sure that works for him, but I mean, you saw the difference in temperament between Justin Thomas and Will Zalatoris. And I mean, when you stand on a playoff tee and even though it's an aggregate, you need results now. You need to churn out a result and quickly. And it just seemed like he was just deferring even from the beginning. And I think the 72nd hole was just a strike extra, and sometimes you can treat that right, but it just seemed like once JT knew he was in the playoff, whether it was against Pereira and or Zalatoris, it was full speed ahead for him. Mito Pereira, I can't describe whether it looked like the follow through was that he got struck by lightning or a 2-strike foul ball swing. It was kind of a combination of the both of those, and I think it goes back to 17, the 71st hole, where he was an inch from making it a 2-shot lead, where that water ball, I mean, he's bare minimum in a playoff, and maybe that changes his mindset differently. Maybe he doesn't feel the need to hit a driver there. Maybe he hits a shorter iron in there, or I don't know, a 3 or 4 something, or a hybrid in there where he can just play it smart and safe, and kind of like Tiger at Augusta a few years back, just take the bogey and know you have the win. But that 1 inch, I think, shifted his mindset. And I think ultimately he was a victim of too much waiting on the tee. He's waiting on the 72nd hole in his thoughts, never in this position at this stakes before. And he has the club in his hand and he's ready to go and he can't. And he's just standing there with his driver. That being said, the miss you can't have is right. And I'm sure because Joaquin Neiman has a similar mentality from his teaching professional, and Joaquin was of course following Pereira as well. Don't miss it right, miss it left. Take the high risk out of play smart. But I think he thought that he was in a good position, and just I think he got a little bit carried away on the downswing. I don't. I think that people are being too cruel to him, calling it a collapse. I don't think it was necessarily a collapse. I just think there was just too much of a brain overload in that moment where he just put a poor swing on the ball, and then from there it was shell shocked and recovery. I don't think it's anything near what Jean Van de Velde or anything like that, or even it's probably closer to Phil at Wingfoot than it would be Jean Van de Velde at the Open Championship. I think that Phil, it's a lot more safe. It was a similar lead. You had the game at your doorstep, and he missed it in the worst part he possibly could have missed. That's probably the closer comparable. The people that are calling it a collapse in Jean Van de Velde, it's not at that level. I think this is a severe learning lesson, and I think this will help him mentally think more one shot ahead or one thought ahead to help him process results, because he has the game and he showed that the whole weekend. And he made so many crucial par saves in the back, but no one's going to remember that. They're going to remember the 72nd hole. And I don't think that's fair. With Young, again, I mean, he's been a bridesmaid several times on this swing, and it came down to one hole, which, if I remember right, was the 16th, and the double bogey was just so costly, and it's those mistakes. And he has the game, and I mean, he probably should have been lifting the Wanamaker as well. I mean, there's so many guys that had one hand on it, but from what was it, 11 or 12, I'd say that Justin Thomas had two hands on it. And I think that was the difference, the fact that he was that alpha, he was the aggressor, and he wanted it more than anybody else did. And that's what it came down to. He was one shot ahead in his thoughts. He had his ultimate supporter, his caddy, who has been there, who has seen that course, who knows what it takes to succeed in any moment, mentally especially. And you saw the difference that made. And that's why this result ended up how it did. And I hope that these three learn. I think that Zalatoris is a perennial team player, whether it's on any cup, Presidents, or Ryder, but he needs to have more of a killer instinct if he wants to push this envelope to a major. And I think he gets there, but I think this is the biggest learning lesson of all, because this is really the closest he's ever gotten. I mean, he touched it, he kissed it, but he couldn't get two hands on it.
Yes, this was the first time it felt like Zalatoris had a real chance to win. He was, like I said, second at the Masters a year ago, but Matsuyama, if not locked it up, he had a substantial lead that he almost wasted all of on the back nine, but it never really felt like Will was in it. This time, Will had a flat-footed start with JT at the start of the playoffs, so certainly there, and just got outplayed at the end. I hope that Pereira takes a lot from this, because he played wonderfully the first 3 days. He was leaking some oil most of the day on Sunday. That's where the comparison to Phil at Wingfoot rings true for me, is Phil was driving it all over the yard that day, but still somehow carried the one-shot lead into the 18th. Pereira had to make so many clutch saves of pars, at least 3 or 4 from around 10 or 15 feet. But despite scrambling his butt off, he still shot a 75, 5 over on the day with that closing double. So let's not act like he was draping himself in glory, but he almost got it to the finish line anyway. So I think a credit to his grit, if not a credit to his game on Sunday. And how about how gracefully he handled that post-match interview with Amanda Balionis on CBS. So not a lot of guys would have done that, but I think it helps that he didn't have huge expectations coming into the week, so he could at least convince himself in his mind that it was all gravy from there. So we'll see more of him, but again, golf is a fickle sport. You never know if that would have been or will be his best chance ever to win a major. I don't know if I say I doubt it, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's the closest he ever gets. A solo lead on the 18th for a major championship. Not too many players get into that position. All right, shot 3 here as we move to the back side of the par 4. Tiger Woods back on course and back making a cut in a major championship. Of course, he made the cut at the Masters. He was T10 after one day at the Masters. Not such a good start, at least after the end of round 1 here, Zach, at Southern Hills. He was 2 under through 5, but ended up shooting 4 over on the first day. But just like at the Masters, used some guile and enough good shot making and making some putts as well on Friday to make the cut, jump back into things, and at least stick around for the weekend. But again, paralleling his experience at Augusta, It looked like he ran out of gas, looked like the leg was bothering him more as the week went along. And that cold weather, again, for the second straight tournament, it looks like he's going to be a warm weather type of golfer going forward, which makes me concerned for St. Andrews. I guess he's got to pray for good weather out there because it's a good walking track for him. But we all know at the Open, anything goes as far as what comes out of the sky. So does it look like any progress for you for Tiger? Because he withdraws. He made it through all 4 rounds at the Masters. Feels like a little baby step back, at least for me. Pun not intended, of course, with that foot bothering him. But it doesn't look like he required any additional procedures. He's back home in Florida by all reports after a quick stop in LA to check out things with his doctor. So I guess that's a semi-positive there. But in the end, we don't finish a golf tournament. We don't play all 4 rounds. That's going to be a failure if you're in the mind of Tiger Woods.
Yeah, I mean, I get nothing from this week for Tiger. It was just good to see him out there. It's good to see him enjoying his surroundings versus the tunnel vision we've seen. We've talked about this several times. I'll keep this brief. I mean, he was at the cellar. There's no reason to play a 4th round when you know the climate's not going to be indicative towards helping your body. When you have an extra ailment, that only makes it even more difficult. There just were too many factors. There was no reason to be a hero and finish it. He was a hero in making the cut and grinding to make the cut after kind of falling a little bit prey to his own game, physical and mental, on Thursday. So that in itself was his win. But beyond that, I mean, with the cold weather, how everything was, we've talked about this. The cold's not going to help him. The cold bothers him anyways. Bad Frozen pun. But regardless of that, the whole thing, that's where he's at. I mean, like you said, he's a warm weather guy. He had a good draw Thursday, Friday. The tournament tried to help him so that he could make the cut. They did everything they could do, but because he made the cut on the number, he had that really quick turnaround. And between the quick turnaround and the weather, there's not going to be as much ample time to have recovery. And the tournament goes on whether you're in first, or you're tied for 71st, or you miss the cut. I mean, they can only do so much, and it's a shame that this is what happened, but this is what makes sense. And as much as I'd like to see him at Memorial, I think we'll see him at the Open Championship. And with the weather most likely going to be cold, windy, rainy, or or a combination or all 3, I don't expect him to contend there. But I mean, stranger things have happened between there and the U.S. Open. I think those two, I think he's more better suited for a U.S. Open, depending on how quickly the body recovers. But I mean, we're not going to see him at FedEx Cup. I think that much is a foregone conclusion. You're obviously not going to see him at the President's Cup. So at this point, with how he is, it's probably the most prudent to just do the 2 majors and just take your medicine, bow out, and enjoy the father-son with Charlie.
I don't know about the President's Cup. I guess we'll see. Davis Love III, the captain, has made it clear that Tiger can do whatever he wants to do with this. So that's still a ways off. And it is in a warmer weather climb, even though it is in the fall. They're playing it down in Charlotte, of course, at Quail Hollow, as we well know. I take exception to some opinions out there that say the U.S. Open wouldn't fit Tiger. I think the way he is right now, he's not driving at prodigious distances. He's probably going to try to put the ball in play, and he's still a great iron player when he's feeling good. So for me, Brookline's a nice matchup for his talents, maybe even more so than the old course these days, where he might be outgunned by some of the longer hitters on tour, can turn that thing into a pitch and putt if the weather's right. So I know we were all thinking about the old course, 150th Open, and Tiger's going to make a run at it, but I'm with you. I think I'd like him better at the Open, assuming that, the U.S. Open, assuming that his body is able to recover. Yeah, it's our Open, so I can call that the Open too.
Okay,
I guess
sure,
so.
whatever.
All right, let's look ahead to a couple of weeks from now, Zach, on the PGA Tour schedule. Like I mentioned, you will be at the Memorial Tournament at Muirfield Village in suburban Columbus, Dublin to be specific. Jack's Place. You'll be drinking some milkshakes, I'm sure, as the cliche goes for all the golf media out that way, or maybe not. Maybe you'll be abstaining.
Already done.
Oh, already did it. Okay. But I want you to talk about your experiences. You got a chance to play TPC Potomac a couple of weeks ago, or actually a couple of months ago at this point, as part of the Media Day festivities. I don't think a lot of golf fans out there understand that so many of these tournaments allow the covering media, the working media, to come in there a few weeks ahead of the tournament and actually try the course on for size. You've gotten this chance a few times here at Muirfield Village. So tell us about the overall experience from all your years going out there and what you saw of the course this time around, because Jack continues to tinker with his baby there.
Yeah, he tinkered with his baby for presumably the last significant time last year.
We'll see.
And
We'll see.
well, yeah, absolutely. We'll see. I mean, every dog has its day. We'll have to see how that goes. But yes, this was my fourth time playing, and the one thing the Memorial, the media appearances and the media day, you actually get to walk the course. A lot of times it's cart based, but
Mm.
this was a walk. A lot of times for me personally, I actually, even though I haven't played since 2019 over there, I actually remembered a lot of the lines, so I really didn't call my caddy in for too many putts, which was nice. My long game went how you would expect it to go. Bleep. Um, there was a club toss on number 7, and then I was reminded by Chris Pohl, famously of Pohl's picks, hey, all you need is one shot to get it going. And I was 31 yards away on the fairway, and my caddy's trying to give me my sandwich for bump and run. I said, "Screw this, give me the putter." I get not only give me the putter, but I know the line, and it went straight into the hole. It was a 95 footer. They measured it,
Wow.
and it was straight in the middle of the cup. And then I made a natural bogey on the par 3 with a hybrid and with the sand wedge bump and run. But the caddy was 1 for 3 in giving me advice. A lot of the backside was new to me, a little bit different, easier to see sight lines that I think a lot of people that haven't gone before are able to maybe now enjoy. So it was a good walk. It wasn't a good round by me, but you're not in it for a good round. You're kind of in it to see just these greens are probably going to be running at 12, 13 on the stimp, which is going to be very different from what the casual golfer plays. It moves lightning quick. It definitely, even then, had personality. It would be, honestly, it was ready at that point last week to host the tournament right then and there. It had enough. I mean, the rough might be, they're probably going to grow the rough a little bit more until tournament week, but it's difficult. I mean, hitting out of that rough is not a fun time. It is rough, and that's why so many of these players like going there, because it does remind them a lot of that U.S. Open track, and of course there is that Augusta National charm as well, with everybody being viewed as patrons and just everything from the traditions, the milkshakes. Even though I hadn't been there since 2019, I remember so many of the same faces and just seeing those faces as well and seeing the hi hellos and just picking right back up where you left off. And of course, I got a milkshake shirt among other things. So there's several things that have been added to my wardrobe and taken away from my checking account, which is fine. It's whatever. It was on Gajk's card anyways. Just kidding.
No.
But no, it was not. No, it was not. But the course itself is fun. If you do decide to go, it is a 3.5 hour drive. It's a pretty straightforward drive, and they do have they are revitalizing. The Bogey Inn actually closed for good in February because the owner had passed away, but they're going to be actually doing post game, post kind of concerts and events, revitalizing the Bogey Inn for from Wednesday through Sundays. So there's some serious opportunities to enjoy the course. If you're a family person, the Columbus Zoo is there. So there's a lot of things to do if you're coming from Pittsburgh or you're coming from another nearby-ish market. There definitely is a lot there. They've already had 5 of the top 10 commit. I'm sure Scotty Scheffler will be among those that are committing too. Max Homa has said he will commit, and they've had several guys that have committed. I'm sure Justin Thomas also will. So it's a very good field, and it's the last time a lot of these guys are playing before the U.S. Open, so they treat it very seriously. So it does get a really good field. So it'll be good to cover for. I can't believe I'm saying this an 8th time. That's crazy to process itself. Would have been 10 had it not been for the pandemic, but just fortunate for Dan Sullivan, the tournament founder, as well, the tournament guy, in addition to, of course, Jack Nicklaus, who has us out, and Tom Sprouse, who's the media guy who does exceptional work. Just thankful for them to allow me to do it again next weekend. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and looking forward to providing coverage for you guys and maybe seeing some of you guys there as well.
In an era in which the major championships seem to have taken an extra step above regular tour stops, the Memorial is one of those tour stops that stands above. It's one of those special ones, along with Riviera, of course, the Players Championship too. But this is a special tournament, and it's a tournament that, like Zach said, prides itself in the challenge that's out there. And last year produced a worthy champion, Patrick Cantlay, defeating Colin Morikawa. In a playoff. Scotty Scheffler was solo third. If you look back at last year's results, which of course could have easily been all about John Rahm, who was disqualified due to a positive COVID test after the Saturday round. He was ahead by several shots. So it was eventful for sure, but it's not like it led to a fluke winner. You had some star power at the top of that leaderboard, and we're looking forward to seeing what turns up this year at Muirfield Village, as Zach will be on site, as he just said. All right, thanks for watching the PGN Par 4 for the month of May. We'll be back next month, probably in the aftermath of the U.S. Open at Brookline, the Country Club. Looking forward to seeing that that course in a major event for the first time in several years since it hosted the USAM. For many of us, though, it'll be our first look at the course since the 1999 Ryder Cup, the big comeback for the U.S. from 4 points down in the raucous scene, for better or worse, on the 17th green while play was still going on. One of the most memorable moments in golf history. Won't be quite that out of control, I don't think, but it should be enjoyable. One of the oldest championship caliber golf courses on this continent, or on any continent for that matter. All right, for Zac Weiss, this is Matt Gajtka reminding you to go check out PittsburghGolfNow.com. We have some fresh content on there. Nathan Smith named U.S. captain for the Walker Cup, the top amateur team competition in the world. Nathan, a Pittsburgh area amateur legend who's made the Masters 4 times, national champion at the USGA level. Zach had an exclusive interview with him, and that PGN feature is at the top of the homepage right now, PittsburghGolfNow.com, and we'll talk to you next time.